Welcome to The Bone, the podcast that goes deeper. Here we cut through the noise and get straight to the core of the issues that matter. From real stories to raw truths, we dive deep into the conversations that shape our world and challenge our thinking. We're not afraid to dig in and get to the marrow of it all. Whether it's life, culture, or business in sports medicine, we're here to break it down raw and real. No filters, no fluff, just to the bone. With your host, Shelby Daly, we're getting to the bone. This is a clinically pressed, approved CEU podcast. Find the quiz to gain credit at clinicallypressed.org/courses. Clinically Pressed Company, making the complicated simple through results that give back. Find out more at clinicallypressed.org. Let's get started.
Welcome back to the Bone. Today, we're doing a part 2 of the H2F military athletic training setting. So MacKenzie Heck is back on. Since we talked all around the subject, we hit on some good points on our last episode, but we didn't get to some of the details that help people understand what really happens in the military setting. So welcome back, MacKenzie.
Hey, I'm glad to be back so soon.
So why don't we start where we left off, or what we missed last time?
Yes.
Walk us through a typical day as an athletic trainer in H2F.
Okay, so I will say mine probably does look different than a lot of people who were a normal force comm unit. So I'll kind of put that up. So Fort Jackson is a basic combat training unit. So there are 9 basic training battalions. So I am stationed on the footprint of a battalion at Fort Jackson, and typically I have anywhere from 900 to 1,200 trainees at a time during a 10-week cycle. So my day starts usually, and when I'm in cycle, at 5 a.m. is when sick call begins. So I'm not just arriving at 5, I'm kind of starting to interact just a little bit before 5 to get set up, set my stuff down, and then my battalion is not a typical starship configuration. Some people may or may not know what that is, but essentially I'm not indoors to do my triage. So trainees will come at 5 a.m. and do 2 sit call to get triage. And so me and the medic, who is the NCO medic, he will go through and triage trainees and see if they can stay down at the battalion level or if they need to be referred up to the clinic or to CTAS, which is our brigade level kind of clinic. It's an intermediary between us and the TMC. And so we'll do that. Sometimes that takes 5 minutes. Sometimes it takes 15, depending if we get 20 or 150 trainees down there in the morning to look at. So sometimes that can be quite stressful. Usually the first few weeks are some of the heaviest weeks just because kids are needing to get medication, or they need a shaving profile, or they want to change their shoes or boots or whatever they want to do. That's not necessarily purely medical, but they can ask for things or whatever. So then I usually take anywhere from obviously 1 to 12 is sometimes my maximum, but sometimes I'll take up to 20 kids, depending if I think that's something I can kind of work through kind of quickly, or if it's someone, hey, like they just need some self-care guidance, so I can give them some different stretches they need to do. If it's a low risk injury or pain placement, so that I can be like, hey, you can do these in the room. If you need help, I can teach you what you need to do. But other than that, I don't think we need a full evaluation yet. And usually that helps most of them, and they don't have to come back and they don't have to go on profile and fun stuff like that. So my goal usually for sit call is to have the trainees back to their company by 7 or 8 at the latest, so that they can go to training, because usually their training for the day starts, or they are getting transported out to wherever they need to go at about 8 a.m. every day. So getting them back to where they need to be so they can go out to do training daily is really important, because if they miss training, it's docked against them. I think right now, or it has always been this way and supposed to have been this way, but if they miss, I think 36 hours of training aggregate or total, they will get recycled, which means they have to start back over again at day 1 sometimes. So they don't really like that. They don't want to do that. Most trainees I run into are scared to go on profile because they don't want to get recycled. So after sit call, I'm usually done by 7 to 8:30, just depending on my patient load for the day. I will usually start documenting. I'll reach out to any company commanders if I have a trainee that I'm concerned about or have specific instructions for or whatever. and I'll just make sure that I follow up with them, or if they ask to talk to the chaplain or something like that, I have to kind of let them know and be like, hey, the trainee asked to talk to the chaplain. I talked to them. They didn't talk about any, homicidal, suicidal thoughts, because that's like a big thing. So I have to I always put that in the text message of like, hey, they didn't say this, but they just want to talk to the chaplain. But talk to them, usually do documenting. We use Sterner, and it's ancient. And so I saw a post on this the other day on TikTok, and this doctor was like, literally like, Sterner, like, people don't use this anymore. And I'm like, yeah, it's the worst. I remember using it when I was in college when I was at football, and we had to input stuff, and I was like, this thing is actually awful. So
We're not sponsored by them, by the way.
We're not, thank God, because I would be like, you're gonna have to cut that out. Good thing you're not sponsored. Anyways, shout out Cerner. I really just need you to update your platform. Like, we just have to be better. But I usually document it. Sometimes I used to check people in, do that whole process first, and then I can go into their chart and do the orders and all that fun stuff, which I was not familiar with doing a lot of that or super comfortable with that before I worked for the military. That was kind of like a whole new process for me, learning how to just ordering different things like CPT codes, ICD-10 codes. Like, those were kind of like foreign languages to me. I still don't know the exact numbers and codes, but I know how to type in what I need and I can click it. So I can do that. But usually I'm doing that for anywhere from 1 to 2.5 hours, depending on how many patients I see. And when I have to sit there and do it for 3 hours, it's the worst. But now I have a standing desk, so I feel really great about that. So I don't have to be seated the whole time. And so that's good. Usually when I'm finished with that, if I have time after I'm done documenting and whatnot, somewhere in there I eat breakfast, because I do not eat breakfast before I arrive. I don't have time, nor do I feel like eating at 4 a.m. So I don't really love to do that. So somewhere in there I eat breakfast or whatever. And so usually after I'm done documenting, I'll try to go out to, whatever they're doing. Depending on the week, it just is very variable where they are. So the first week, we have a lot of briefings. We have to brief every company on sick call and what that process looks like. And usually I'll talk about my side of the room, what I'm doing. I do things differently in my battalion than some other people do, but I'll check their personal shoes and I'll approve personal shoes that they bring with them that are better sometimes and more supportive. I'm trying to dance around this topic very carefully. But I will approve them because that I have seen direct results that I have tracked within my own battalion that show a reduction of injury by letting them use their personal shoes that I'm looking at myself and approving and seeing that those people are not showing up to sick call as much for nagging injuries, stress injuries, things of that nature. These are non-peer reviewed results, but it was more than 50% for my experimental groups showing up. So I was like, This is pretty good. And that's all I needed to show my leadership to be like, this is a good idea. This is what we need to do. And so that's been a thing that I like to do. But I'll give briefings. We'll do that. And usually I do a stretch brief at the end too, to kind of give them some baseline stretches, because some of them have literally never stretched before in their life, which is wild to me. But a lot of them just have never done that kind of physical activity where they feel something. So we talk about injury versus I'm actually injured, or aching, muscle soreness versus injury. That's a big conversation all the time. Really try to hammer that in. Sometimes they still don't understand. That's fine. It's just the nature of things. If it's not briefings, I'm usually just going out to obstacle courses to kind of, monitor, cover like we would a practice. Like if you were at a high school or college or normal setting, just going out there, kind of making my face kind of known around the kids, because, or trainees, I call them kids just like I would at high school, but they're adults to 18-year-olds, who knows. But I'll go watch that. Sometimes I'll be there for injuries. Sometimes I'll get called out to an obstacle course. One time I got called out there and unknowingly, I was like, this feels kind of weird. I wasn't thinking fracture, but I was like, let's go get this checked out just in case. And it was a trimalleolar fracture. And I was like, nice. So she got surgery and that was crazy. I did not think it was that bad, but then I was like, no, let's check it. But anywho, so I think that was pretty interesting. So you get some cool stuff sometimes. I'm not covering that. Sometimes it's hard to go out to the range, and it's also just really loud. And yeah, it's just very loud out there. So it's hard to do stretch briefs. Sometimes I'll go out there and do that, but that can be quite difficult because I'm not super loud. My voice doesn't project super well. So I don't love yelling at them to do stretches because I'm trying not to be your drill sergeant right now. Like, I'm just trying to be like the like one kind of like middle ground person that you have. But it also gives them an opportunity when I'm out there, they see that like I am like integrated into their unit, and they can come up and ask me questions. They're given instructions on how to do that because they're not supposed to come talk to me by themselves, especially like when we're, out there. Sorry. They can come ask me questions, and it becomes more like approachable. Like, they can see, just like an athletic trainer at a school, I think, the more you don't go to practice and like necessarily expect something to happen. Like, you're really happy on days when you don't have to do anything, right? So it's like the same for me as like if I go out to any type of obstacle course or to the range, or when I'm going out to field training events and doing ruck marches with them, it kind of shows them like I'm an approachable person to them, and like I'm there to take care of them. If they do have a question, or if they're like, hey, this is bothering me, or hey, like hypothetically, like if this was what's going on, like what should I do? And I found that pretty cool to be able to do that. Sometimes I'm doing ruck marches, like I said, and those days sometimes I won't do sit call because everyone will be out in the field because they're doing their field training exercises and stuff like that. But those are kind of like morning to afternoon, and usually I'm done by 1 p.m. And every once in a while we'll have, well, not every once in a while, like once every 2 weeks, we usually have a command and staff meeting in basic combat training, and like I'll hop into those sometimes if I can, especially if the battalion commander has asked for specific information, or she wants me to share something that I've shared with her with leadership, so that people are getting that from me if they have questions, or if there's different concerns about trainees coming back with some different things from the clinic, because if they are sent up to the TMC or the troop medical clinic, they sometimes are not seeing necessarily a musculoskeletal based person. They might see the physical therapist, but they also might just see a regular PA who's not sports medicine trained. So if they have an injury and they're just going to see a PA, like they're not necessarily getting, anything like super deep as far as musculoskeletal care. They might be getting referral to x-ray, and even if that happens, they're just getting a really general profile that sometimes just doesn't help them. And that can be really frustrating for everybody. So that's our role as athletic trainers, is really to try to get those people so that we're giving them really curated care, so that those trainees are not being on these long extended profiles that's keeping them from training, and then ultimately pushing their graduation, and then them having to be put somewhere else, or having to be a recycle or do everything else over again. Because at the end of the day, that's more paperwork for everyone. So that's like my kind of all over the place 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. every day. And sometimes I'm there, super late, and doing ruck marches from 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. and that's super fun too. My day it's kind of flexible, just like, when you're an athletic trainer at a high school or college, your day is kind of like, all right, well, how do I balance that out? But typical day is usually 5 to 1300. That's a pretty sick schedule, Monday through Friday for me. So I really like that.
Every season begins with hope. A team pushing through the heat, chasing something bigger than themselves. But when temperatures spike, even elite athletes can cross from pushing too hard to heat emergency in minutes. And once core temperature rises above 104 degrees, the clock is ticking. That's why athletic programs rely on immersion cooling equipment, the ICE personal cooling system from First Line Technology. ICE delivers full-body water immersion, the medically proven gold standard for treating exertional heat stroke. Its insulated, waterproof design maintains optimal cooling temperatures between 35 and 59 degrees Fahrenheit, even in extreme conditions. With capacity for up to 6 athletes at once, ICE rapidly reduces core temperatures by an average of 1.8 degrees every 3 to 10 minutes, fast enough to prevent cellular damage and protect vital organs. It deploys in under a minute, drains quickly, and collapses for transport, ready for sidelines, tournaments, and away games. Built from rugged, puncture-resistant materials and trusted by sports medicine teams nationwide. Because every athlete deserves to go home safe. No game is worth losing a life. And because heat stroke is 100% survivable if you cool first, you transport second. Protect your team. protect your season. Choose immersion cooling equipment rapid relief when it matters most. Learn more at firstlinetech.com.
So with the full team that's working, so like the strength and conditioning coaches, the PAs, physical therapists, how do you coordinate between all of you, and what do those relationships look like?
So I would say that my relationship with the strength and conditioning coach at my battalion, ours is very good.
Mm-hmm.
I think on the whole, most everyone works really well with their strength and conditioning coach. Strength and conditioning coaches at the battalion level, at least at the basic combat training installation, looks a little different because H2F model is really based for cadre or for enlisted members or officers. So that's really what the program is aimed at. Obviously, at Fort Jackson, our schedule just looks so different. So, like, most of the NCOs and drill sergeants and officers are all really consumed with a basic combat training schedule and having to be present at training with trainees because they need supervision and they need all these eyes on these people who are being trained to be soldiers. So their schedule can be really crazy. So the strength and conditioning coach, me and him work together. He will sometimes come do sessions with the trainees if drill sergeants, ask him to do that, and he'll do some AFT courses to help them for their physical test, or just to help them get better because they just aren't athletic. So, but it also gives the drill sergeants a little bit of a break, especially those first few weeks when it's super heavy. There has to be a really large drill sergeant presence those first few weeks when the trainees are really having to be ingrained into discipline and just learning how the things need to go and how they need to act, really. So he does that sometimes, and we kind of coordinate. Sometimes that's difficult for me to help him with those sessions because typically they run into when I'm doing sick call. So if I can, I hop in on those with him and more am an assist in that situation. And I love when I get to do that. I love teaching the deadlift station. I think it's fun. That's usually the hardest thing for them. Even with the trap bar, that is a difficult thing for most people is deadlift. So, getting them to a point of doing a 3-rep max, you want them to do that safely. You want them to do it correctly. And that takes a lot of teaching and like hands-on instruction, especially for people who've never done it before and have really bad lifting mechanics.
Yeah.
That's helpful. I like doing that with him. Those are really fun sessions where they get a workout in, but they're also learning. And that's a lot of his role when we work together with trainees. As far as when he's working with cadre, he runs that. He's like in charge of Nick. Nick does a great job helping program stuff for our cadre members. He, whatever they need or want to do, he is ready to do. Usually there'll be sessions with drill sergeants and officers, when we have more of a cycle break or we have like slower weeks. But I think just more with the concentration on H2F and the push for really utilizing the resources that they've been provided. They're going to start doing some more sessions and some different things this cycle, or not this cycle, but coming into this next year, which I think will be really cool and beneficial. He's done a great job. He got what actually now, it was a classroom. Now it's a gym, but it's his gym. Like really got it outfitted with stuff we already had. And I think we purchased turf, the battalion purchased turf to put inside so they can work on some things in there, which is really nice. But he really has done a great job getting that gym situated so that we have something on our footprint that's easy for our drill sergeants to get to, so they can get a quick workout and they don't have to drive across the post to go to the Spark, which is the main H2F facility on Fort Jackson. And that's really helpful just because drill sergeants don't have a lot of time, genuinely. I think I said this on the last one of like, drill sergeants and even just cadre in general, I guess we have a similar, athletic trainers and drill sergeants have a similar kind of life to a degree of like our lives, especially like a high school or college. Like your life is kind of dictated by somebody else's schedule, and their life is very much dictated by the training schedule. And it can be grueling. It's really tough. Sometimes they're there at 3 a.m. and they don't leave until 7 p.m. or 9 p.m. that day. And so they're getting almost no sleep, and it's really hard for them to get away to get a workout. And like, obviously I wouldn't be motivated to go get a workout in when I'm only getting 4 hours of sleep, and you have a family, all those things. But Nick does a really good job with that. And has really built a lot of good relationships with them. As far as PT goes and like PAs, so like I guess there's like two separate little fonts here. So like we have a PT that works with H2F that all the athletic trainers are kind of that we are under right now, who we report to, and he is a GS employee. And then there's another PT who is a green suitor who we also kind of work under. And if we have a drill sergeant or cadre who are, if it's an injury that we have to spend more time on, that we like don't have the capacity to at that time, or if we just think something else is going on and we need a referral for imaging or things like that, or we just want a second set of eyes, we'll kind of push them up there to the H2F PTs, and that's kind of how that flow goes. And we have a good relationships with them, and they're easy to work with and like easy to connect with to get our cadre in, so that they're getting seen in a timely manner and they're not having to deal with trying to like find an appointment or like do whatever. It's very easy and they really love it. As far as PTs at the TMC that are for the trainees, we also have, over the past 2 years that I've been there, it seems like relationships have grown a lot. I think there used to be different capacities of which the ATs operated at Fort Jackson, where they worked differently with kind of medcom people and all that stuff. And so I think now our relationships with them are really great. It kind of works like, I feel like more like an orthopedic clinic. So if I'm reaching out to an AT who works like in the ortho clinic, like that's kind of how I'm treating the PT up at the TMC for trainees. I'm like, hey, like kind of what's going on. But the PTs for the trainees kind of operate like PAs almost. So they're not doing as much like rehab necessarily. They're doing a lot of evaluation and like, what is it safe for you to train? And like, do we need to get imaging? Do you need further evaluation from an off-post orthopedic physician? And they're more of that role. So they're doing a lot less of like what traditionally I think we think physical therapy, or what we know physical therapists are doing. So it's a very much like, hey, like, are you good to go? Are you not? When they're coming for follow-ups, it's usually to adjust a profile or to send them back to training full time. So it's a very, like when I went up there and shadowed, I was like, this is very different than how a PT usually operates, which is fine. And I think it's great, honestly. Like I've learned a lot from them. Mr. Williams is the PT that I typically am in contact with. He'll see my trainees, and he's really cool, just so smart. He was a major in the Army, or I don't know if he's in reserves or National Guard still, but he's really awesome. So he's just like familiar with the Army structure and like the expectations. So that's really helpful. And then he communicates well, and like he'll be like, hey, so I got this trainee up here. Oh boy. I'm like, don't tell me this. And he'll be like, yeah, you were right, it was broken. I'm like, great. Like that's all I wanted to hear. So those are fun things though. Like it's nice that it reminds me of the relationships I've had with the different physicians I've worked with, and he's been really great at just communicating with ATs in general, and the other PTs up there have been pretty good of just educating us on different injuries and like making sure that we're all on the same page, and like we all want the same things. Like we want trainees to get better. We don't want them to be as hurt as they are. What can we do to make that better? How do we get this to change? How do we just make care better for trainees and for cadre at the same time? Like there's a lot pulling, especially at Fort Jackson for that. But yeah, I mean, that's an interesting, those are really good relationship. As far as like normal PAs that are at the TMC, we have there's like lots of diversions of how this goes. It's like we have unit PAs that like are assigned to our battalions, and they are great, and they usually work at that CTAF, so that like in between little spot before they go up to the clinic. And my PA is awesome. She's incredible. Captain Kynes, love her. Shout out. She's great. And usually if I also need, imaging, I can text her and be like, hey, like, can you put in an order for an x-ray for this? Usually it's like simple stuff, that I'm like, let's just get this checked, meets all the rules, all that kind of stuff. And so she'll put it in for me, and she's really great, and she does a good job. The PAs that are at the TMC, we have not so much a good of relationship with. There are a lot of them. I will say that, like there have to be, I don't know, there's a lot of them, but there's a lot of disconnect there, I think. But also they're not MSK people, so when they're seeing MSK stuff, like it's just different. And like they're, sometimes just having to profile that and like send it out as low risk. And sometimes things get mixed up. There's a lot of kids coming up there. I mean, like there's at one time, if all battalions are full, I mean, there's 12,000 trainees on the post. And, you know, a good percentage of those are going to the TMC every day. I mean, sometimes, at one battalion could send over 100 kids there. Then that's just 1 out of 9. So, like, you know, if every day someone's sending this about the same amount, I mean, like, you could be having, you know, 900 kids up there, but that's a bad day for them. But even if you're seeing 500 kids a day, I mean, it's a lot of people to treat and to get through the door. So that relationship looks different. I don't know if that will ever look different, but I think they are definitely more responsible for like general medical concerns, sickness, and things like that. And I think that's totally fine. But I think from what Tony has told me, the PT that I work with mostly for trainees, he has really tried to develop that relationship, and it's gotten better over the past few years. I don't think it's perfect, like an ideal situation, but like I think it's better, and they have more respect for each other, which I think in the past has been kind of a power struggle. But I mean, I think it flows as good as it can, but I think naturally I'm like, this could always be better. Like we could always be doing something better.
So, athletic trainers, you've got a plan for everything. But when seconds count, is your emergency action plan as ready as you are? Meet Easy EAP, the digital emergency action plan app built specifically for athletics. Easy EAP puts your EAPs right at your fingertips on your phone, tablet, or laptop, so you can act fast, stay compliant, and keep your athletes safe. Update protocols in real time, share with staff instantly, send mass alerts, and carry every venue's plan in your pocket. No more binders, no more digging. It's time to modernize your emergency prep. Visit easyeap.com and be ready for anything. Easy EAP, your plan when it matters most. If you're an athletic trainer who's ever scrolled a job board and thought, I wish I didn't have to sift through all these personal trainer and physical education teacher jobs just to find real athletic training roles, you're not alone. Athletic Trainer Finder was built by an AT for ATs to fix what's broken in the job market. Every week, they track athletic training jobs from across the country and spotlight the roles that actually respect the profession, the ones with clear pay, realistic expectations, and strong settings. They don't pretend the market is perfect. They show you what's out there and call out what's worth your time. The mission is simple. Make the athletic training job market more transparent, more honest, and more fair. Whether you're burned out, curious, or ready for your next move, Athletic Trainer Finder puts the power back in your hands. Visit atcfinder.com and create your free account to see this week's jobs. That's atcfinder.com so you can find what the market really offers.
You talked a lot about fractures and then musculoskeletal conditions. What would you say the top 3 injuries that come through your side of things are?
Top 3 would be medial tibial plateau stress fractures or overuse injuries. That's not a common injury that most people see ever. I didn't really know they existed until I started working at Fort Jackson. But those are really big, just ridiculous, super, and it's like easy. Like they come in super tender on MT, sometimes have a hard time with range of motion depending on how bad it is. And sometimes you can catch them early and sometimes they wait way too long and they're fractured. But I will say that it is a low risk stress injury. So it's something that they will train through. And they're pretty aggressive. We're pretty aggressive with that one. You know, if it's something you can tolerate, you know, you'll be on profile for a good bit, see if we can like reduce and manage. But a lot of times it's like, can we manage this? How much can we get you through? Like what's dangerous, what's not as far as training goes. But a lot of times that can be fixed with / prevented. I don't know. People say you can't, and I'm like, whatever. But better shoes, better running mechanics, strengthening for glute med and adductors, and then lots of stretching. Usually it really helps them resolve that issue. But like to catch it in overuse stage before it gets to stress fracture stage, because when it gets to real stress fracture, it's definitely uncomfortable. They really are not happy. That's the number one all the time. Like classic. Next one. I mean, ankle sprains are probably like up there. I mean, like they do some crazy things. Sometimes they're running around the CTA, which is just outside their company, and they trip on a sandbag or whatever.
Yeah.
Or they're doing something in the field, or they step off. They will step off the curb or some like concrete by the DFAC, and like it's one specific spot, and it's been multiple trainees. I'm like, can we please fix this? I'm like, this is like a big injury spot for everybody. Like, can we please fix whatever they're saying this is?
Just put like a little tombstone right in that area
No,
so people can see
ankles.
it.
RIP to all the ankles that have been broken right here. Well, not broken, just sprained. A lot of ankle sprains. I've had some pretty good ones. I mean, honestly, where I've had to rehab them a lot. That becomes really interesting when I'm having to do that, because when I'm having to rehab somebody who doesn't know any ankle rehab or has no idea what that is, which like I guess it's bad to have an assumption that people would, but like you're really having to sit there and teach, and then I'm like, do you remember what you did yesterday? And they're like, no. I'm like, fantastic. I'm like, I really was counting on you.
So it's everywhere.
Oh yeah, it is. I was really counting on them like retaining like at least 3 of these things if they like aren't retaining any of it, because then I'm trying to evaluate and like make sure they're doing what they need to do. I'm like, okay. Ankle sprains are a pretty good one. Would probably be number 2, and then number 3. I mean, I think stress injuries in general. I mean, shin splints you're just going to see a lot of those. Like that's a pretty typical one. I started having a lot of like hamstring strains right before I left, which I hadn't seen a lot of, but I guess I started doing a lot more sprint training with not a lot of warm up. And I said, can we please do some plyometric warm ups, please? But everyone's straining their hamstring. That'd be great, because that's really not fun at basic. Like straining your hamstring at basic combat training is definitely that's a challenging one to get around. That one's hard because there's a lot of uncomfortable. I mean, when they start low crawling and they start doing different things and they're doing obstacle courses and also still having to run or do whatever, like having a hamstring strain is not fun. So I've had a few of those that have been pretty not fun, but on the whole, those are probably my top 3 that are most common at this point.
So since our last episode, we may have came out of that episode with more questions than answers, but it sounds like there's been some new updates, some more information that's come out. So do you want to hit on that and try to summarize what's going on at this moment on December 22nd, 2025?
Yes, subject to change
because it's all going to change next week.
Pretty much. I mean, literally. It was really funny. I was like, because this was like, I don't know, I guess 3 weeks after, no, not even 3 weeks, like 2 weeks after we recorded this first part of this. I had mentioned in the last one about like having a data management system of like where we can have all this data, and then like job security and all this stuff. And then literally at AUSA, they had a conference last week, and there's been some articles put out about it. The NATA posted about it, about basically how they are doubling down on the athletic trainers are really important to the H2F structure, and how we are important, but H2F as a whole is a very important thing for the Army and is a good program, and the investment that they have put in, they're seeing their return. I'll try to I want to make sure I have everything so I don't forget. But first of all, they're seeing a lot of return on investment based on what the research that they have gotten. I was listening to the Mops and Mo's podcast today, and this gave me some good like ideas too. But they were like, this information, a lot of the data that they have are presented about ROI is not peer reviewed yet. So we'll take in stuff with a grain of salt, because they said they reduced referrals by 140%, and they're like, you can't reduce something by more than 100%. And I was like, that's really funny. I said, I didn't think about that till you said it, but I was like, yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. You can increase by more than 100%, but reduction by more than 100 is a little strange, but okay. So I thought that was funny. But they are seeing return on investment from the way that they collected data and the way that they did it. Based on what's published, is there for every dollar invested, they're seeing $8.15 on a return. So that's a pretty solid return on investment, I would say.
That's the 800%.
Yeah, that's 800% increase. So so that's really awesome. I mean, like that's showing that investing in people who know what they're doing and professionals who care about their job and care about helping service members pays. And you're seeing the return, and I think that that's really helpful. They're seeing a lot of reduction in substance abuse. They are seeing, I think what they're meaning by musculoskeletal referrals is like any referrals that I need to go off post. So I think that's what the referral is. 40%. We'll see how that checks out in a little bit. But I hear I hear the heart behind it. There's a lot less likelihood of service members having to go off post for a orthopedic referral with these embedded services, which is awesome. We love to see that. And then we're seeing higher AFT scores. They're seeing,
And what's that? The AFT score?
Army fitness test. So that is the new iteration of the Army physical test that they have to take, I think at least once or twice a year. Trainees take it twice or 3 times a cycle, depending on if they pass it or not. But yeah, they have to run 2 miles, time 2 mile. They have to do a 3 rep max deadlift. They just do what's called a sprint drag carry. So they're on a turf field. They sprint down, sprint back. Then they drag 245 plates down and back. Then they do a lateral shuffle, I think, down and back. And then they do a kettlebell carry. It's usually 40 pounds each. That one's fun to watch. And then they do a sprint to finish, and it should take them under 2 minutes, I think. And then they do a max plank and then max hand release push-ups. Yeah, that's 5 things. Okay. So they do all those things. It used to be a standing ball throw, but they got rid of that. That was the ACFT. Had the standing ball throw. That was not good for people. People did not do well in that event. So they got rid of it. And it honestly, it did, like, what does it judge? I think that was like the end all of that one. But so they've seen better AFT scores, which has been great. I think they've seen like better like mental health stuff. I mean, they've seen a lot of improvement from H2F. So I think that is the important part of it. And, of course, like how, like you're putting professionals in a space to help service members in their given profession. And like, how would you not see the return on that? I think so. But I think there's been buy-in from service members. And obviously, like I said last time, I mean, drill sergeants and service members alike across the force made it very clear to the Secretary of the Army, like, athletic trainers are important here and like we need them. And so I appreciate that still. And I think that, the ROI speaks for itself generally. And that's not just us, that's every domain together. So that's really cool. So ROI, great. We love that we're seeing that. With that, they're also rolling out a data management system that's centralized, universal, and for everybody to put their data in. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, this is awesome. I was like, I threw it out there, and somehow, I mean, they were
manifested it. It's
oh, sure, yeah. I'm sure I manifested that. I don't know, but I mean, that's been in the works. That has been in the works, I think, for a long time, and I think it's just figuring out like what worked best, and like, it's a big platform. They have to do bids. I mean, for a company to build the software, to do the thing, whatever. And so I'm really interested to see how that rolls out. It's going to be called H2FMS, I think. And it will track everyone's data. And I think everyone will input somehow what they're doing. There's not a lot of like insight to what that looks like right now, but it's something they're going to be rolling out, which I think is awesome because they're increasing forces across H2F over the next few years. And so I think it'll be really interesting to kind of see how that rolls out and like what that looks like. I saw a job posting, not that I'm going anywhere, but I'm not. They're looking for like a human performance specialist for this contracting company to oversee the data and to be able to present it, what's needed, what's not, kind of that kind of like role person of like, hey, like this looks great, that doesn't look so great. How can we make this more presentable to someone who doesn't necessarily work in human performance or work in this like sphere that this information makes sense to them and like is deliverable. So I think that's really great. I'm really excited for that. When I saw that, I was like, thank you, God. I really was. I was like, this is great. And like I had heard, a long time ago they were thinking about that, but I think it was like H2F was so like up and down of like, is this program going to be like a long-term thing or not? I think was like really the question of like how much do they want to invest in this? And like I said, I think they're seeing their return. So investing in a proper data management system is important for them to get real data points and like aggregately collect them in a way that's accurate and just consistent for everybody is amazing. Like I'm so excited. I really hope, really hope it meets all my high expectations. Which like who knows? I mean, it's the Army, so I mean like they can, or I mean just government military. I mean, who knows what kind of nonsense it'll be, but I'm excited for it to roll out because I really just hope that it helps everybody within the H2F structure to be able to report their numbers and report whatever data that we're asked to report in just a really consistent way that like helps everybody show that like we are worth the investment and this is like good, accurate, and reliable information.
Yeah. Because previously, was it basically every individual trying to put together their own data and research and presenting it, and this will be more encompassing, like you had said, where it's maybe all athletic trainers' data is coming together, or
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it'll be everyone, so they'll be able to see it, I think, at the like top level.
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't think we'll probably be able to see like across like to other people's data, but from a top down view, they'll be able to see everyone's data, what it looks like across different forces and different brigades and what their needs are
Mhm.
and who's getting utilized and, what kind of injuries and all the different things that where H2F is about, I think, which is that's all assumption. I have no clue what this could actually look like. So don't come for me, but like I'm excited to see what that will entail, and I really hope it works to the benefit of everybody. And I know there'll be some growing pains and probably some changes, and probably won't look the same day one as it will day 365. And I think that's what you have to get used to working in the military setting is like you may start with one thing looking this way, but like it's going to take some time for it to really flesh out and look the way that it's actually good for everybody.
Well, and I think on the last episode, we kind of talked a little bit of the success metrics, and then we just talked about ROI. What are some of the success metrics being defined by the H2F programs right now? Like readiness, for duty, injury reduction. Can you give us some parameters on that?
Yeah, so I think they're looking at one reduction just in overall musculoskeletal injuries, because having those embedded teams, you should be having some preventative factors at play. So you should be seeing a reduction in some injury in some type of way. But then also they're looking at days on profile, and then referrals to off-post resources that I'm aware of. There's probably more things. But on the top level, I think those are like the main things they look at, because if they're sending somebody off post for a physician referral, orthopedic referral, that's costing them money. So those are, I think, are the top things that they look at. And then, also obviously days missed of training. So, or who's not deployable, because that's a big deal. So, if you're not deployable, that causes issue. So I think between those 5 things, deployment's not really a big issue where I'm at, because nobody's getting deployed from a basic combat training unit. We're not that bad yet. Things are not that bad yet. So they're not getting deployed. But days of training missed in my case, that is something they're looking at. Recycle and reset rates of how many trainees are having to get recycled to start back at the week that they basically the last week completed is a recycle if they're having to start back then, or if they're having to be reset, which is a day 1, week 1 reset. And so looking at those, if they have to do either one of those because of injury, and looking for reduction in that, which I think collecting data at the basic combat training level has been a challenge for a very long time, just because it's a lot of information. It's hard to track for sure. I think once you start getting into the recycle reset type situations, it gets difficult to track. But I think to circle back a little bit to the question you asked before, we were reporting numbers and things to our program director at Fort Jackson. We still are. We report numbers to them so they have our encounters counted in their data metrics that are presented to the brigade commander. Mm-hmm. And then as far as more detailed like injury data, we kind of track on our own because we haven't gotten like kind of a consistent and good tracking thing for between us, mostly ATs and the PT clinic at the TMC, because that's the biggest connection. I think the biggest difficulty we've had. And that's just a challenge we haven't really figured out, what's best and easiest for everyone to do. But yeah, I think, those are kind of the data quirks that I think are going to start be worked out pretty soon, because they're seeing it's worth getting that stuff to show like, hey, this program is like worth something. So like, let's continue doing it.
Yeah.
But yeah. Raising the standard in sports medicine starts with how you build the team. At Elite 7 Sports Medicine, we're building something with purpose. We're a physician and athletic trainer-led team providing medical coverage at athletic events across the country, with a strong focus on professionalism, collaboration, and doing what's best for athletes. Our work doesn't stop when the event ends. We care about continuity, communication, and supporting quality care beyond the sidelines. As we continue to grow nationally, we're staying grounded in what matters most: strong medical leadership, clear systems, and team-first mindset. We believe in raising the standard for sports medicine and creating an environment where quality care and professionalism come first. Find us at www.e7sportsmedicine.com. Join a network that values you.
Are you an athletic training student dreading the BOC exam? After years of school and thousands of dollars of tuition, you shouldn't have to rely on outdated flashcards, expensive textbooks, or pen and paper practice tests that look nothing like the real computerized exam. That's where AT Study Buddy comes in. Created by athletic trainers for athletic training students, AT Study Buddy is the online study platform built for today's tech-savvy learners. You'll get 7 full-length practice exams that feel just like the real BOC, plus 10 domain-specific tests and more than 250 interactive study tools like drag and drops, flashcards, anatomy hotspots, and fill-in-the-blank modules. You can retake exams, review your results, and actually track your progress. And the best part, AT Study Buddy users consistently report first-time pass rates above the national average. Students, educators, international professionals transitioning to the US, and even certified athletic trainers coming back from lapses are using it to step confidently into the next phase of their careers. For about the price of a single practice test, you get a full month of unlimited access, or ask your program about discounted group license with faculty dashboards that help support your success. Study smarter, not harder. With AT Study Buddy, your journey to certification starts here. Since we last recorded, was there any other updates that we missed out on that you had on your list?
Yes. So also what he mentioned was, General Francis mentioned, and I believe the vice chair, General Mingus, was also in this meeting as well. I think he had to step out during this time when General Francis was presenting this. But they talked about how basically they're being told from the Pentagon, from Secretary of War, and from the Secretary of the Army that they need to move fast in expanding the H2F program. So essentially by 2030, I think they're getting, what's the number? I think 129, is the number of brigades they will be in, which will be all combat brigades, basic combat training, I think MP and Reserve and National Guard brigades will have an H2F team in some capacity, whether that's a full team like we have at Fort Jackson or at Fort Bragg, or if it's H2 Fast, which is kind of a smaller crew. There'll be a lot of jobs opening up in the next few years for H2F and for athletic trainers specifically. I think the number that was thrown out there was they'll be employing 269 athletic trainers by 2030, which would make our contractor and the Army. So it's kind of a both and. They're like, well, it'll make the Army the biggest employer of athletic. No, it'll make our contractor the biggest employer.
Yeah.
But I see what you're saying. I would love to listen. Put me on a GS schedule. I'll get paid a little bit better. That's fine. But you gotta want to do that. So, but it will ultimately make H2F, the Army, our contractor, whatever, the biggest employer of athletic trainers, which is really cool. It comes at a very interesting time. Mopsim has also kind of put this out there, and I mean, I also thought this of like, all right, well, you want to hire a lot of people in the next few years.
Yeah.
You would be the largest organization that is employing, like you would employ the largest number of athletic trainers as an organization, and you just tried to get rid of 180 of us.
Yeah.
Not even like 7 or 8 months ago.
Yeah.
So obviously, like let's just not ignore it. Like that's gonna be a big sticking point. Like it's going to be a challenge to overcome.
Well, it's just the question of job security at that point.
Exactly. And I think that it already is a challenge. I mean, people are having to you know, I mean, obviously I left. I took a little hiatus. But I'm back and I'm excited. I'm happy about it. Like I said last time, I think if I didn't feel some sort of like hope, some sense of security, like with what I'm seeing, I wouldn't have come back. And I probably would have pivoted. But also at the same time, it's like, I don't know, when you do something you really just like enjoy, I think it's hard not to go back, even if it seems kind of uncertain, which might be crazy to some people, but whatever. I'm a dreamer. I don't really
If it's
care.
something that you love, it's hard to let go.
Yeah, it genuinely is. It really is. But I mean, it will pose a challenge. I think, you know, military bases in and of themselves aren't usually in the most like convenient locations, which is difficult. That makes hiring more difficult. And you know, you have to be a good salesperson to sell somebody to go to Fort Huachuca, which I think
Fairbanks,
is
Alaska, where it's negative 50. They've been trying to get me. I can't do it.
You're like, I'm good. And that's totally fine. And I think that's like you just like know what you want to do. And like if it's not this, like that's totally fine. And I think, you know, you want the right people in the job who are at the very least curious about it. Potentially just have like a really good fire for the profession, because I think that there's a passion that you got to have for this profession to know like the value you bring to an organization and to get creative, because there's going to be some spaces where you're not going to have everything you're used to. You're going to have to get creative with your treatment. You're going to have to get creative with how you're kind of selling what you're doing to these people, because some of them have never had an athletic trainer before, and they've never had access like this to a healthcare provider who's there, who, you know, you can do musculoskeletal care, but you also know stuff about a little bit of everything else, which is great. So I think, you know, that's valuable. But I think too, you know, it's like you can go anywhere for 2 years is my thing. It's like you can travel, you can go live anywhere for 2 years. And if you hate it, then like leave. But you might go there and you might end up loving it. And like, I think that would be my like encouragement of like, if you're curious about it and like it's something that you feel like, you know, why not explore it? Like give it at least a year. But like, you know, because it's going to take you a while to get in and fit in with everybody. Maybe, I don't know, if you're really good at being social or whatever, like maybe it might be sooner, but like, you know, it took me about 6 months to really like, because you're trying to learn how to do your job in a different setting, but then also, you know, you kind of get that, and then you can really start to get to know everybody, because then you can be like, okay, I'm confident what I'm doing, without being like just coming in there and being like, no, this is what we're doing, like I know better and blah blah blah, because like that's not a good attitude to approach these people with, because they do know what they're doing, and like you are coming into their space, and it just innately looks different. So learning, you know, kind of learning the culture, learning the structure of leadership, learning, you know, how these people operate on a day-to-day is really important. But going to a different place could be fun. I mean, me personally, I don't know if I'll ever leave Colombia. I would really have to pray about it, honestly.
Yeah.
My family just moved here, like my parents just moved to Colombia. So it would be hard for me to go right now. But like I said, I could do anything for 2 years and I can move back here. Like I'm not like, And they would understand if there was something like really cool that came up for my career to do, I would do it. But I think also something I'm seeing, and a challenge potentially, or opportunity, really, depending on how you see it. There's a lot of athletic training students that want to get into the military setting. They find it really intriguing, and I love that. I'm like, that's amazing. I was not intrigued by it when I was an undergrad. So I'm like, that's great because, like, but I think the hardest part about that component is there is a PWS that for most forces and contractors says that, you have to have, 3 to 5, at minimum 3 years of experience to be an athletic trainer. And that's the Army or the Air Force or the Marines, like their requirement for the contractor. And like that's not something the contractor can necessarily change or overlook. And so it's, it is what it is. And I have a love-hate relationship with that. I talked with a student about a week ago about this because she really wants to get into the military setting. And I was like, I only know what my contractor says. I don't know if other contractors could be the same, but usually there is a job years of experience requirement that most contractors do have. And that's not necessarily coming from them. That's coming from like the Department of Defense. So like our Department of War. So, but I think it's really great, but it's also tough because it's really hard to get students like clinical experience at a military setting.
Yeah.
Because there's a big process you got to go through to basically make a contract between the installation and a school for students to come. And with the new clinical immersion kind of aspect to these MSAT programs, I don't know. I think it like is difficult because like if a student from, I don't know, what's a program way out there that I don't know, like some school, I don't know who this program's anymore, but I know South Carolina, and that's right in town. I think that would be like obviously an easy relationship to establish between Fort Jackson and them, and like have that, I forget what it's called, it starts with an N, but it's basically a contract between the school and the installation that, they could come be a student, they could do their learning there, they would have like temporary credentials to get on post and all this stuff and whatever. That to me, number one, I think is important to somehow begin conversations with the Department of War / all the branches of like, hey, if we're going to hire this many people and you're going to have this expectation that these slots be filled, like we have to educate these kids on this setting. Like this is important because there are kids who want to do it. And I think that's amazing. And I think that's a great thing, but it's hard to get any type of clinical experience in this setting at a schooling level because there's a lot of hoops you got to jump through to get there. And especially with the clinical immersion piece, where they're doing a full semester wherever they want, that would be a great opportunity either at Fort Jackson or at Fort Bragg or, I don't know, 29 Palm. I mean, like literally anywhere. I mean, it would be so cool.
Well, it'd make more sense to get the approvals to be on base too at that point if you're going to be there for more than 8 weeks. Well, and I mean, you kind of beat me to the punch, but so basically 2030, we're going to have over 300 jobs in the military for athletic trainers. We need to work on clinical site rotations. There's going to be some barriers with the 3-year requirement to be able to apply for these jobs. What else can a program do to try to prep interested athletic training students, since this is going to be a big job opportunity that they could do very well in prepping people for, or not very well to prep them for? And is there a way to kind of speed up that 3-year process ultimately that would make the government more willing to maybe change that requirement?
Yeah, that's what I've been really thinking about. I'm like, what? Because like I don't know if I have the perfect answer for that either. Like if I'm being honest, I mean, like my first, obviously is like getting kids in a clinical rotation, but I'm also like, okay, well, if we can't bend on the PWS and having that 3-year requirement, like what's the solution? Because you're going to have so many job openings and like people, I mean, are going to be hesitant to come to this setting. And which is understandable. And I think there are some bridges of trust that have to be rebuilt, and that is going to take time. And so I think as time goes on, it will get less scary, hopefully. But also, too, I was like, well, it could be interesting if essentially, I don't know if this would work across multiple installations or if this would have to be at one installation, but essentially, and I'm like, I guess I volunteer as tribute if anyone hears this. But essentially to be kind of like a teaching brigade almost of like an internship slash, but not an internship because you are a full-time athletic trainer, you have your master's degree.
Mm-hmm.
You are working, but you have more direct supervision. So almost
like a GA ship almost.
Yeah, like
just kind of bring that back.
Almost like a GA ship, but like, I don't know, like just more, like they would just get more hands-on supervision, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And if that would like appease the government or appease the Department of War to have somebody who, I mean, I'll have my doctorate in the next year, so like, I mean, if anyone's out there listening, I mean, it happened last time, so I'm kidding. But I think that would be an interesting model to be able to train people, help them grow in their clinical skills out of MSAT.
It puts them on their feet much faster because they're integrated into the system, they're learning the ways, and then they go off and do their own on their own after a year or something. I don't know. I guess,
yeah.
Did the 3 years really make a difference for you? I mean,
like I went into it with about 5 years of experience. I mean, I think having experience in a traditional setting is helpful.
Yeah. I think there's a maturity of being seasoned a little bit for the military, which we don't really give enough grace for other settings.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is like the maturity and really your confidence. I mean, you, at least here for Jackson, I mean, you're seeing stuff that like when I think about it, if I was freshly graduated, a lot of it I would panic about, if I'm being honest. Just the level of like stress injuries you're seeing and like how you are taught to treat that versus how practically that's being done, just because of the nature of activity that they're doing and like how aggressive we can be with activity that they are allowed to do, like not pulling them out of activity for 6 weeks, like unfortunately. And like a lot of fresh kids would come and be like, what are we doing? I'd be like, this is what we're doing. So, and I think confidence wise, that's where like I may have struggled honestly, but I also came into this after, I was at a college for a year, I was at a high school for a year and a half, and I was at a big high school for about 2 years as head athletic trainer. So I feel like I came in with a lot of experience and like leadership experience, communication, just feeling confident in my clinical skills and like what I was doing. But I think if that can be developed in a setting where, they're working professionals, but they have some oversight, really like a GA ship, I think that would be really helpful as far as numbers to get the people that they want, because there are students right now who want to be in this setting, and telling them wait 3 years, I'm like, that's really tough.
And they might get no.
Yeah, because in the meantime they might find something else, and then it's like, like what are we doing? And but I think there's an opportunity to be able to mentor and teach and just help people coming out of MSAT programs like really develop in a year or so, and then be like, hey, like this is where you're at for a year. I mean, I would assume it would have to be at one location where they're getting like that, like, because I feel like doing virtual, like we were talking about this because we've learned this at the VSC game, the virtual schooling is probably not the best thing.
No.
So being able to be hands-on with them, being like, hey, like, how did this meeting go with leadership? Like teaching them how to build the relationships and like establish things. Because it's not just about, like a lot of what we talked about at the panel is like, it's not just about, your clinical skills. It's also really about how can you sell what you're doing in a way that's like authentic and like that you care, not just because you think that you're the best thing on the planet. It's like, no, like I care what I'm doing. Like if you just like hear me out for a second and we maybe try something, we could make things better. So I think, being able to coach kids through that and like how that looks, and coach them through good conversations, and then coach them through like, hey, like this conversation didn't go so well with my battalion commander. Like, how do I do that? Like this conversation with the drill sergeant didn't go great. I don't know how to
Yeah.
manage that. But also, with injury stuff of like, hey, like I got this really weird injury. I don't really know what to do. Or, how do I manage this stress injury? How do I do this better? Like being, in those types of spaces to instruct, because I mean, like genuinely, I mean, like if you were in the military space, I mean, like you didn't get any exposure to this before you started. Like you
No.
just jumped in, you're like, all right, like great, like we'll try it. And, a lot of the applications like college or professional, like AT experience, like working at a professional level, I'm like, that would not have changed my capability at this level. Or even
Yeah.
like to go work at a force com or to go work with a special operations unit. Like, will there be some learning curve? Sure. But like, that's because they have more fancy equipment that I don't know how to work and like
Yeah.
how to read. But like, that's most athletic trainers. Like, if you've never had exposure to like the higher technology, higher cash level things, like you're going to have to learn some different things, and that's okay. But I don't think that takes more than like a week, like, or a few weeks really,
Yeah.
to at least have a baseline understanding. That could potentially be a solution. I don't know. Um, you know, because I think that's the biggest thing that we're going to run into as a profession, because, on the whole, you broke a lot of trust when you almost let go so many people, and now you're coming back, which I'm like so grateful for, and I'm glad that they see the value, obviously, and they're wanting to bring on so many people. But it's like, how do we find the middle ground that honors both feelings of like, we like this happened, but we see what athletic trainers you do, we value like your role in this organization, and we want to keep you. So I think it'll be a challenge, and the 2 to 5 years of experience is just going to be tough.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we're still rolling a good amount of students out of professional programs, and it's like only a very small percentage of those want to do military athletic training or tactical athletic training. So it's like, all right, well, what's the cake here? Because you want to hold them out for 3 years, which like I get, because I mean, I had a girl that when I first started working, she was straight out of an MSAT program, and she wasn't ready to be there, and
Yeah.
she ended up leaving. But I told her, I was like, this doesn't make you a bad athletic trainer. Like, I just mean, it's like so clear. Like, you're not a bad athletic trainer because this is like too much. Like,
Yeah.
it genuinely is, because like, you know, you don't have enough experience yet, and like you're not confident, and like I can see that, and that's okay. Like,
Hmm.
it is. And she's gone on, she's done other great things, and she's doing awesome now. I think she's been at a high school, she's been a few different spots, and she's done well. And I'm like, I think once you get the confidence under your belt, like you'll be fine. But I think, you know, kids in a professional IT program are only seeing what this looks like in an athletic traditional sense.
Yeah.
So coming over to the military straight out of an MSAT program is tough, because it's completely different than anything that you have done, and the structure looks different. Everything is different, and in a fun way to discover. But if you yourself are not confident, first in yourself, but then second as an athletic trainer, like it's going to be really hard for you to adjust. And there's some people who are, and that's awesome. I think that's great, who are ready straight out of school.
Hmm.
But obviously, it's just going to be interesting to see what their solutions might be. But like I said, I'll have my doctorate at the end of next year.
Well, I think that's the question I'm kind of posing is, okay, so the NATA came through for this H2F fiasco of 2025. How are we prepping for 2030 at this point? And how are we going to
Right.
work with the government in implementing strategies to be able to employ these positions that they are gratefully opening for us? But at this point, I don't think, I mean, you'll get a small percentage from the established workforce because they're somewhat interested in it, and it may open up something in their location. I don't know. But I think you have to get that market ready of newly
Yeah.
graduated athletic trainers within 2026 spring, of how do we prep them for these positions that are opening, or even market military athletic training to the already established athletic trainers.
Right.
Because I think there is going to be, we're already seeing the transition from the traditional settings. So I'm sure that like you said, sometimes the hours are a bit crazy, but I do think it creates a little bit more stability at the military level.
100%.
Is you're not necessarily traveling as much. There is a set schedule. It's not you're going to games. Um, from what you were saying about the injuries, I think they're a little predictable to an extent. They're not actively getting slide tackled, whatever.
Yeah, I remember getting called to an obstacle course and they're like, I think they broke their ankle. I'm like, okay, I'll be out there in 5 minutes.
On their military training ultimately, which you don't get in regular athletics. They have so many different variables that are enacting on their performance, like academics or social lives, and military. It's pretty straightforward, I feel.
For the most part, yeah. I mean, they don't sleep well and they sometimes are depressed. Well, they're depressed or they're just having a hard time, not being home. I mean, it's tough, but
yeah,
I get what you're saying. Like the factors are just very different. And, I would agree. But I mean, I think athletic trainers at Current who have experience, who would want to come do this job. I mean, I think there's ample opportunity, obviously. And they have lots of locations that are looking for athletic trainers. I mean, you will ultimately learn things and you will be challenged to get better as a clinician, I think, just because you're having to make decisions a little differently, and I think have to be a little bit more I might get slammed for this. I think you sometimes I think sometimes you just have to be a little bit more, maybe eloquent is the right word, I don't know, and just like the way that yeah, I don't know, it's eloquent in the way that you're evaluating somebody and the way that you're documenting that and the way that you're going through your day to day, and just elevating what you're doing, because sometimes you are having to look for a deeper issue and it's, you're having to do a different kind of evaluation that is more detailed and looks at a lot of different things than maybe we're used to. Or fell out of practice of doing potentially. But I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. But, I think there's lots of opportunity in the military setting to do a lot of the similar things that athletic trainers do now, which is, I think, help the patient population that they are around. And it's similar to a high school. I mean, the people leave every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Just because they PCS or whatever, or they get out. And so it's similar. So it's tough. You have those relationships and then, they're gone, they leave. And so, I don't know, you just get an opportunity to work with some really different people. And, I mean, it seems like to me, there's just a lot of concentration really within the H2F. I mean, we're not the only ones, but in the H2F space I can speak to, on long-term physical performance. So really making sure that people are getting longevity in their physical health and mental health and spiritual health. All those things is really important. But as far as the physical health part of just making sure that, their exercise is a part of their routine that's consistent, and it doesn't have to be crazy. You don't have to go be a power lifter, but just making sure you are getting movement in daily and, making sure you're eating well, and then making sure that, your body feels good. And if something's hurting you, you have an athletic trainer that's there that you can be like, hey, this is bothering me. Can you please help me? And they not being scared to ask for help, because I think, similar to, sports programs, kids sometimes are scared to ask for help because they don't want their coach to be mad at them and they don't want to miss games and they don't want to do blah, blah, blah. But I think it's a similar tangent in the Army of people they don't want other people to know they're hurt. They don't want their leadership to know that they're hurt. They don't want to miss out on things. There's lots of FOMO, I fear, but they just don't want to take care of things in the right time. Because I think there's, many places have been a culture where being hurt is kind of sort of like a badge of honor, but also if I say I'm hurt, I'm not going to get to where I need to be as far as getting a promotion or whatever, or getting into a school, but ultimately it ends up hurting them worse down the road. And I think that's where athletic trainers are important, because I think we're on the ground making those relationships within a unit and establishing hey, we can help you and we want to help you, so this doesn't become this big issue down the line. And I think it's just very similar to what we do in a traditional setting. It just looks a little bit different, and indifferent of the way if you have a really consistent schedule and you have off all federal holidays, and usually you're done with work by 1 to 3 p.m. depending on what your schedule looks like at your installation. And the people that you're serving. But I mean, some cool locations. I mean, they're having overseas positions that'll be open. So if you want to go live in Italy for a few years, I mean, hey, like go live your life. Or Korea, or there's a few different places. I don't know if I'd go to Korea personally, but like that's, if you want to go to Korea, if you're into that stuff, like go for it. But I mean, there's lots of different cool opportunities, and like, I think it's interesting, put yourself out there, see where it takes you, and you just never know. But lots of cool opportunities upcoming. I'm interested to see how the NATA helps kind of rebuild that bridge. I mean, obviously they're pushing stuff on their social media as far as, the stuff that just did come out of AUSA, like they're hiring a lot of people, and like I think an article was put out around the same time by the Army about expanding H2F and what that looks like, and how athletic trainers have been integral in that, in the program and just in general. So I think that's important. I think it's just like how do we connect the two of like H2F and the Army and contractors are trustworthy and athletic trainers can take those jobs, But I think it just takes a little bit of time. And I mean, hopefully I'm helping, because I mean, I'm going back. So I'm like, obviously that's either really dumb or really brave. But, I think if you get into it, you might really love it, and it will look different than what you did before, but you might love it a whole lot more. It's really weird. I really never thought I would be here, but here we are. And so I'm excited to have trainees come January 5th, and I'm sure it will be a pleasure. They're really funny. So they're fun to work with to me, but you might not love working with that population. You might like working with more of the adults at like a force comm unit, or MPs, or at a reserve or National Guard unit. Like there's so many different things that are kind of coming up. So I'm really interested to see how kind of that all rolls out. Yes, I am on TikTok, and I don't post consistently on there. It's just really fun, honestly. It's just a fun little outlet. Sometimes I like to share what I do, but I am on TikTok. So if you reach out to me on there and you're a student, it's not unprofessional. Just write a professional message. Don't be weird.
Yeah.
But I'm also on Instagram as well.
Well, thank you so much, and we'll probably have to have a part
for today's
3
episode
coming up
of
soon
To the
with
Bone.
all the changes
I hope
going
we sparked
on.
some
But
new
you're more than
thoughts,
welcome to come
challenged
back,
your
and
perspective,
we'll learn
or
more
simply
about it.
reminded you to dig a little deeper.
Thanks,
Remember, life isn't just about what's on the surface. Sometimes you've got to cut deeper and get to the bone of what really matters. To the Bone podcast is a product of Daily LLC. It's hosted and produced by Shelby Daly, ATC, and Randy Daly. No clinical decision-making should be based solely on one source. While care is taken to ensure accuracy, factual errors can be present. For more on the show, visit www.tothebonepodcast.com. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Get involved in the conversation. You can find us at www.tothebonepodcast.com. Drop us topic suggestions or be a potential guest. We're all about connecting with you, our listeners. Until next time, stay curious, stay grounded, and keep cutting